With us now, one of the people in that meeting, New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. He's also, of course, chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, it's always a pleasure to see you. Give us a little inside view of what that meeting was like yesterday.
Well, good to be with you, Jose. I mean, this was a meeting at the request of the four senators who wanted to speak to the president about what we can do to provide relief to immigrant families here in the United States under existing law, because we have been frustrated by our Republican colleagues unwilling to do anything about solving the overall immigration question. They want the issue more than they want a solution. And so without any Republican votes whatsoever, we are left with the pathway to trying to find executive powers. So there was a discussion about how do you look upon TPS, temporary protective status, for certain groups that are in the country, and to look at reauthorizations of some and designations of others. How do we look at the rulemaking that has been pending as it relates to DACA, the young people who have created an extraordinary future in this country but who don't have status? And lastly, how do you use existing law, as the president has used, for example, in the case of Ukrainians and others, for the purposes of looking at certain categories of immigrants who are producing a public benefit to the United States, essential food workers in the food supply chain, essential healthcare workers, and others similarly situated. So it was a positive conversation. I'll look forward to continuing to work with the administration to see if we can make some of these things happen.
Senator, I don't mean to call you old, but you've been at this for so many years now. I mean, you were part of the Gang of Eight in 2013. We can talk about the DREAM Act. I mean, we can talk about 2010. This is something that you have been doing for decades now in your different roles. I'm just wondering, and I'm thinking, for example, TPS for Nicaraguans. I'm looking at how daily the administration is deporting people from Haiti that arrive on our shores asking for asylum. Cubans. The number of Cubans that are being intercepted in the border is at an all-time high, and these are countries that are going through extreme hardship for its own people. What can there be action when, going back to the years you've been doing this, barring real legislative action?
Well, Jose, I have been at this at some time because I think it's a national imperative. It's both for the national interest, its economy, and for our security. I'd rather know who is here to pursue the American dream versus who might be here to do it harm. But I can't do that if I have millions of people in the shadows and can't bring them forward to do what most of them overwhelmingly do, is work hard, contribute, build families, and help build out communities. But look, we start off from the reality that even when I was part of the Gang of Eight with the late John McCain, and we passed in the Senate comprehensive reform by a very wide margin, which had robust border enforcement as well. It was Republicans in the House of Representatives that never gave the legislation even a vote. And I think if they had, it would have passed, and history would be different today in terms of the immigration question and the challenges that we have. We have an unprecedented time in history in which we have huge flows of people. You know, 5 million Venezuelans have fled their country. We talk about Ukraine. Well, 5 million Venezuelans have fled their country. Cuba is going through a new round of exodus because of the oppression in that country, and Nicaragua and others. So while we cannot obviously be an open door nation, I don't advocate that, we can, under our laws, go ahead and give people their case to make asylum. If they qualify, grant them. If they don't, then they will have a permanent order in which they don't qualify, which is different than some of the provisions being used at the border that allows a rotating door. So I hope that because we cannot get Republican votes on immigration at all, that including with Dreamers, which is like the motherhood and apple pie of all of the immigration issues, that we can get the president's executive action on some of these things. It won't solve everybody in terms of their status for those who are already in the country, but it could provide potentially a significant number of people with some sense of security. And while it would give them as a whole, whether it's TPS, whether it's public benefit entrance, or whether it's Dreamers, basically it just gives them a stay of deportation and a work permit. It doesn't give them access to any benefits, but at least they would have the peace of mind that when they go home at night, the knock on the door is their neighbor, not an ICE agent.
And Senator, I want to talk briefly about the leaked draft Supreme Court opinion, which makes it appear the High Court could overturn Roe Wade at the end of nearly half a century of abortion rights in the U.S. You responded to an article on Republicans trying to steer clear of abortion politics in the midterms in a tweet saying, I call BS. My Republican colleagues don't get to wage a decades-long war on the rights of half of the population and then try to steer clear of the consequences of their own actions. What did you mean by that?
Well, I'll clean it up for your program. Basically, what I'm saying is that look, Republicans finally got what they've been advocating for. If this is the final decision of the court, then Republicans have been militating for decades to end a woman's right to choose and the privacy basis under which that woman's right to choose is determined for her own personal future as it relates to her body and the choices she will have to make. That has been the law for half a century. So now Republicans, if you listen to them, you would think that all of those who were advocating for this result would be jumping for joy at the decision of the court. Instead, they want to run away from that decision. This is an example of the dog catching the bus. They got what they wanted, and now they don't want women in the nation to know that it is Republicans who are stripping away a woman's right to choose. And for all of us beyond that, the fact that by undermining 50 years of precedent of a case that was decided, reaffirmed by the Supreme Court, that ultimately, if you can change 50 years of precedent, you can change 50 years of precedent on voting rights, civil rights, and any other right you think that we have as a country that has been assured.
Senator Menendez, it's always a pleasure to have you on with us. I very much appreciate your time.
Great to be with you.